Hey guys, it's Tea Time with Christine. A contact has come forward claiming to have known Dan Glidewell for most of their life and is willing to expose his true nature. This individual's account has been verified through sensitive information that they have provided, and their testimony offers insight into Dan's character and behavior, which may have influenced Gypsy Rose. If you are interested, go ahead and give a like and subscribe so you can follow any updates and engage in the conversation. Also, to be clear, you will see redactions in the conversations, not actual names of the people the source is referring to, and stickers covering the source's profile photo to avoid outing the source and putting anyone in harm's way. Let's get to it. I know some things about Danny Glidewell. Because of his anger and fights, he hurt someone, and they disbanded because they got scared. Now to pause right here, I combed this conversation a couple of times. There were some things that seemed to bounce around a little bit and hard to fully understand, but I did try to keep things in order to make it make as much sense as I could for you guys. So Christine replies with, "Oh wow, what the F?" Someone who had anger problems, I guess in addition to Dan, was blamed instead of him. Christine asks, "Cooper?" And the source says, "No, John." Cooper was shady. Well, Cooper is also irrelevant, just someone that ran around with Dan and caused chaos. Praxis, also known as Dan, got irate, very irate, and followed me out of the shed to talk or threaten and stopped me from leaving. It was a little frightening. So at this point, we're getting a glimpse of the hot-headed side of Dan. Christine responds, "Yeah, I wondered what his involvement was." Christine asks, "Do you know who Dan was living with at the time of Gypsy's mother's unaliving? Also, what made you reach out to me today? I'm curious, but I'm super appreciative though." Not a clue. I want to know who told her. Gypsy? He was into underage girls. I mean, he did have a reputation. I'd love to let this source know Dan isn't the only older married man she sought out while pretending to be underage. But this contact has made it clear that they know nothing on the Gypsy front directly, and that's okay too. Christine says, "Told who? Me? That he liked them underage? One of his old crew told me that. Underage wasn't a deal breaker. Do you happen to know anything about the fight the night at a bar and Dan broke his back or whatever?" The source says, "The story I was told was that he got his back broken because he tried to take an underage girl out of the house without her mother's consent. Not a bar. The belief is someone hit him in the back with a baseball bat to make sure he couldn't leave. No witnesses." So this story sounds quite similar to the story of Dee Dee allegedly threatening Dan in the Walmart parking lot with a hammer, but it doesn't quite add up to that story. Does this mean there was another young lady Dan believed to be underage or was underage that he was trying to take advantage of? Drop your comments below. Let me know what you think, but let's keep going. Christine asks, "Who was the underage girl?" No clue. Supposedly, she was 15. He seems to think 17 is a legal age. Possibly have it. To clarify, in the state of Missouri, they consider age 16 the right to consent. At 17, you can consider yourself a legal adult, but your parents are still legally responsible for you and your actions until you are 18. There are a lot of fucked up things about that, but it varies based on the situation. But in all likely, if you're still living at home with your parents while under the age of 18, and they know you are dating someone over the age of 18, they are within their rights to press statutory rape charges, despite your right to consent. So it's all about the situation, really. Continuing, Christine says, "Well, now it makes me think it's Gypsy's mom because he thought she was 15, but was really 18 at the time." Okay, I'm not still fully convinced this particular story relates to Gypsy, but to another underage girl. As we continue along, I think others may agree. The conversation did then bounce around to a lot of irrelevant things momentarily, but Christine does try to change the topic. But before she can, the source said, "Alice said this," and forwarded a message. It said, "Yeah, but he did shit before they got married," referring to Dan's ex-wife, that he was legally separated from while fooling around with Gypsy, and locked her in the bathroom and shit. Sounds very familiar, huh? Remember when Gypsy said Nick locked her in the bathroom and the investigator called her out for lying? Well, when you listen closely, it even sounded like she said, Dan locked me in the bathroom. I'm pointing this out because Gypsy loves borrowing other people's stories and selling them as her own if it makes her look good or like the victim. Christine did ask, okay, I need to know about John. And that's where the conversation shifted. The source says, I haven't seen John in years. He and Dan, were both members of a biker organization, and they did ritual combat to settle differences. So I had to look it up because I was curious about the context the source was angling at when saying ritual combat, and what Google said was, ritual combat refers to a form of fighting that takes place within a ceremonial context, often with strict rules and symbolic meaning, where the primary goal is not necessarily to inflict serious harm, but to demonstrate courage, masculinity, or social status, rather than to achieve outright victory through violence. For anyone who might have also been curious. Anyways, John has problems with controlling his anger, and he has been taken advantage of for it, and blamed in the past for violent outcomes. Danny loves fighting, referencing the enforcer. But Danny doesn't like to stop. Before they disbanded, Danny had a few fights where the police got involved or could have. They disbanded because the heat got too much. That was the consensus I got. And Danny being the manipulator, John might have gotten blamed because of his anger problems. I haven't seen John in years, so I don't know what kind of person he is now. Interesting. So Christine decides to get straight to the point. With Dan's anger, do you think he would kill? The source says, not intentionally. Doing a drug that helps you to run away from your own emotions will do that. No acquired maturity whatsoever. So this source is referring to both methamphetamine and heroin, just for clarification. Christine asks, so do you think Dan is still using? Oh yes, if he's not in prison, that is guaranteed. Christine asks, do you know what Dan went to jail for? Like any of his serious charges? This is Christine trying to find out if he knows what she already knows. The answer is yes, Dan has had serious charges in the past and has even done time in prison before. The source said, I thought that back was the reason why. I'm sorry, I'm not making much sense of what he is saying in this particular message. So Christine asks, what, for being a pedophile or being a part of a murder? A lot of people have asked that question. Why isn't Danny in jail? I want to know that as well. This is where things take an interesting turn. His actual family has connections somewhere. It's aggravating. I believe that's how he got the shed, from his family. If he was really convicted of SA to a minor, they might have found a way so it doesn't look that way. And the broken back being part of it. Sort of like a narrative, right? Christine asks the source to elaborate. Who is his family? I wish I knew. Christine asks, was a part of what? The source says, why he isn't there in prison? Christine asks, yeah, but has he ever done time? Wasn't it his uncle who gave that shed to him? Other people from that crowd have done the same thing. Erased charges and a past, so they don't look like shitheads. It's like they have a connection in law enforcement that does it for them. Not really sure how you do that. So Christine states, like informants, corruption, or elites. A number of that crowd, Dan's crowd, was intimidating because they were so good at avoiding a guilt, and they would punish you for standing up for yourself. If you weren't careful, you'd commit a crime of passion. That was probably provoked by them. So you could go to jail for their misdeeds. Christine says, yeah, a lot of manipulation, it sounds like. Hope Dan had nothing to do with that woman's death. To put a pin in that, real quick, completely 100% alleged, there's an aggravated witness that came out to her some time ago stating he saw Dan and Cooper leaving a woman's home. being the last ones leaving before it went up in flames and the woman left inside to die. This was less than 6 months after Dee Dee's death. There is no current evidence confirming that, but we also haven't looked into that case. That's still considered an unsolved murder. This next message I found quite disturbing. Danny was willing to drug girls, young girls, age 14, to get them to do what he wanted. So parts of this message is very revealing on who the two sources are, so a lot of it is redacted. A reminder, this source came to Christine to be interviewed. Christine did ask if the other source would be willing to talk with her. We both are aware of who this other source is, but we are respecting their privacy. The contact says, "It won't happen. You are pushing through a wall of trauma and anxiety to get your answers." They used to give a speech about how they would hunt down all your friends and family if you snitch. I strongly believe a member of law enforcement is standing in the way, and that's pretty intimidating. Please understand. So this alone pretty much was enough for me to validate this source, because we have had a couple of other sources who have spoken up before stating the exact same thing that this contact just said. How they will hunt down your friends and your family, and snitches get stitches. They were pretty worked up and scared, and who could blame them? The source stated something very strange. Not sure if it's a true story. Can't seem to find anything that corroborates that. I heard a story once that Dan and Philip were under protective custody for something criminal they said about their family. At the party. Not there, but I heard about it because a member of the party, that person wasn't happy about it and was very vocal back then, talking to a lot of people. Danny pissed off a lot of people by assuming he could do whatever he wanted, even in that organization. So according to the source, because of drugs, Danny was sort of a Peter Pan emotionally. So in retrospect, he had Peter Pan syndrome and he never grew up. So this is where the messages pretty much dry out and come to an end for right now. I would like to hear from you guys, your thoughts and opinions. Do you think Dan groomed Gypsy, taught her anything? Do you think she knew about this stuff before Dan?